This is your tech news briefing for Friday, July 15th. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. It's been nearly 5 months since Russia invaded Ukraine, and as the war has unfolded, it's taken an immense toll on Ukraine's people and its economy. A key sector that drove the economy before the invasion was tech. Ukrainian exports of IT services had been on the rise, with the trade group IT Ukraine Association reporting an increase from $4.2 billion in 2019 to $5 billion in 2020 and $6.8 billion in 2021. So, what impact is the war having on Ukraine's tech sector, and what does its future look like? For a first-hand perspective, I'd like to welcome Andrew Pavlov, the CEO and founder of Enix, a software services company with about 2,000 employees in Ukraine, many in Lviv, and Oleg Roginsky, CEO of people.ai, which builds software to improve sales and productivity using artificial intelligence. While the Ukrainian founder has based his business in Silicon Valley, people.ai had nearly 50 workers in Ukraine before the invasion. Andrew, Oleg, thank you for joining me.
So thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so you guys know a lot about the Ukrainian tech sector, and I think a lot of our listeners have become much more aware of how robust the tech sector in Ukraine was, at least before the war. I want to talk a lot about what's going to happen to that sector going forward, but first, can you guys tell me what it was like when Russia first invaded earlier this year? Andrew, what was going through your mind when this happened, and how did you deal with it for your company?
Yeah, we were prepared, I would say, because rumors were around and news were around, and we sent maybe 2 weeks before to our employees on the east warning to evacuate, but nobody did. But when war started, and in that morning we had about 200 of our employees moving from the east and some from Kiev to Western Ukraine together with their families. So we had 1 week of moving people and accommodating them in Western Ukraine.
What did that mean for your company? I mean, how did you continue operations at all while you're moving so many people?
Yeah, we sent a message to our clients that services might be interrupted during that time. And then actually in 1 week, we were back to almost 90% of our services. So people tend to really focus on work. And they understood the importance of keeping the economy alive in that situation.
Oleg, you're based in the U.S., but you have a lot of Ukrainian workers. What was it like for you? How did you prepare?
Well, back in December, I started a daily stand-up with my HR and technical team leaders, literally working out every possible detail about what happens if the war starts. For example, we had our employees vaccinate their pets in case they're bringing their pets with them during evacuation abroad. We had them figure out who they're going to bring with them, how many cars they need. We even printed out the routes from Kiev and other places and had them have a printed folder of how they're going to drive in case internet in the country is offline. And that work continued through December and January. And around January, we actually made a decision a month before the war started that we're going to activate our BCP plan and evacuate. And so we had probably 80% of the team move to Zagreb in mid-January.
And so do you still have workers based in Ukraine now?
Less than a handful.
I want to talk about the situation now. I mean, Andrew, you said within a week you were back to being operational. Has that continued through the war, through attacks that Russia has been, focused on in different areas of the country?
Yeah, actually, as most of our people evacuated to Western Ukraine, some of them also abroad, about 200 people are appeared to be abroad, so they did it before a war. But as our company became fully, I would say, remote since COVID times, so COVID prepared us very well to that kind of situation, and clients was also ready to work remotely with all the people. So people just change their place to safe places in Western Ukraine, and they continue working.
Oleg, you said most of your staff has left Ukraine. Do you think you would move them back or ask them to go back?
Well, there is two aspects to that. After Zagreb, we invited them to join us in Prague, where we actually have acquired a company that was based out of Prague. So all of the infrastructure and benefits and payroll, everything was already working and set up in Prague for us. In terms of coming back, there is a number of issues there, to be honest. For example, our business insurance doesn't cover employees who are in Ukraine any longer because it's an area of active conflict. So from compliance perspective with the requirements of our US customers, we need to be much more precise and vary of the restrictions that are now imposed on doing business inside Ukraine, which is very unfortunate. But outside of that, one day we do hope to return when it is safe and when employees can safely continue working there.
I wonder what you both think about how the Ukrainian tech sector is operating now versus what it was like before the invasion. You're both saying, our businesses can manage, we can keep providing the work that our customers want, but certainly this sector can't be the same as it was before the invasion, can it?
Definitely, we have some decreasing of speed of growth for IT sector in Ukraine, but I think we are speaking about we expected to grow 50% before a war, and now we will grow for 25%. So anyway, here will be grow. Also, having a lot of people without jobs, I think we will have a lot of switchers to IT industry, because IT industry still can employ people in Ukraine, and companies have active vacancies, active positions on the market, and people want to go to work to IT. We see a lot of people who are switching to IT at the moment in Ukraine.
And Oleg, what about from your perspective? How does the Ukraine market before the war compare to what it's like now?
Well, for us, we are a little bit of a different business profile. Andrew is selling IT services. We are a product company. So for us, the product is being developed. The same product we are selling to worldwide corporations is being developed regardless of where the people are. In terms of what changed, obviously recruiting has become a bit harder. We had an amazing pipeline in Ukraine of all of the engineering talent that was there, and now we have to rebuild that pipeline in Europe, I guess. But our Canadian, Toronto, and San Francisco offices are stepping up, especially as kind of the economy is lightening up here. There is more availability of talent in North America.
Do you think, foreign governments or the Ukrainian government could do more to help the tech sector?
Unfortunately, I do think that it also depends on the industry. If you are in, for example, enterprise B2B focused industry, customers like stability, safety, predictability, etc. So in that case, while we expected some impact, we didn't see impact of customers being worried about Ukraine. I was actually very surprised by how customer base rallied up. And as long as we were communicating that our teams are safe, our data is safe, we are in European Union, and there is not much exposure, if any, to the war, there hasn't been a change in demand or customer requirements for us. I do feel the factor of safety is going to play out for Ukrainian economy at large.
Andrew, you're there on the ground. Is there anything more that you think, foreign governments or I guess even foreign tech companies could be doing to help the sector there?
I think foreign tech companies are helping just because they work with us, and we didn't lose any clients since war started, which is, it was not a surprise for me. I did expect that actually, that we will have support when we seen support of the war for Ukraine. Yeah, definitely some of them want to diversify their risk, but it's more like long-term strategy, and nobody drops us when war begins. So companies are helping, and if I can send a message to foreign companies, work with Ukraine, because as Oleg mentioned, there is plenty of talents that we can hire, and these talents are really available in Ukraine.
Zoe, to your previous question of what Western governments can do for Ukraine, I actually have thought about this. The amount of technical talent that is learning to, both on the front lines and in the back office, basically, learning to operate quickly, iterate, and apply their technical skills to solve problems is tremendous in Ukraine right now. What I think will be very helpful for Ukraine after the war, and this is where people can easily help, is a functioning and thriving venture capital ecosystem. Before the war started, there were 4 or 5 venture funds, all sub $100 million, that were investing in Ukraine. Some of them have gotten good returns. I would love, and my dream is, to help bring back venture capital to Ukraine at much larger scale when the war is over, because there's way too many talented entrepreneurial people there that need backing.
I mean, not to be too negative, though, but the war has been going on for a long time. So if it continues, is there any way to really rebuild Ukraine's tech market to what it once was or to the potential that people thought it might have?
I'll give you an interesting answer. I would have loved to put in a seed investment check into all of Israeli companies in the 70s. I would be very rich right now if I did it. So similarly, whoever comes back and funds the next crop of Ukrainian startups will probably make a lot of money.
Andrew, what about from your perspective? What do you think it's going to take to return Ukraine's tech market to what it once was and to the potential it was seen to be having?
Yeah, here's two perspectives. One from service business. I think service business can rebuild itself pretty fast after war finish. But regarding a venture capital trust and a startup ecosystem, is definitely a much bigger problem at the moment. And the second is after war, I believe Ukraine is under this resilience that we are having since 2014 and then COVID and this kind of war. It's an entrepreneurial nation. That's why I also believe into way of Israel for Ukraine, where we have a self-defense entrepreneurial nation that can do innovation. And I see a lot of innovation related to military stuff at the moment. We are working in a few projects. Here is a lot of startups in that area that get financing at the moment. Robotics is growing here, and like the different kind of robots that can be applied for a war field. So it's happening at the moment. So I mean, Ukraine has the cool potential, and it have to be supported after war, because we can be a good player on that market.
Yeah, and just to that point, the backbone of Israel's tech was IDF, people who graduated from fighting and stayed back in Israel Defense Forces and did all the computer security, advanced weaponry, etc. And then from there, most of cybersecurity companies in the US today either come from Israel or have massive representation in Israel. Well, here's a simple example. Everybody thought that cyber warfare is going to take Ukraine down, take it offline, make the country go dark when Russia attacks. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Either Russians are bad or Ukrainians are really good.
Ukrainians are really good.
So guess what? Back to Israel analogy. If Ukrainians are really good, there's a bunch of cybersecurity companies to be built out of Ukraine.
Andrew, Oleg, thank you so much for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you, Zoe.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And that's it for Tech News Briefing this week. Our producer is Julie Chang. We had production assistance from Ariana Asparu. Our supervising producer is Chris Sinsley. Our executive producer is Kateri Yoga. And I'm your host, Zoe Thomas. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend.